What do you do when the 9 to 5 grind starts to feel like a cage? For Michelle Coulson, the answer was simple: break free. From leaving corporate life behind to launching Remote Rebellion and biking solo from Montenegro to France, Michelle is all about choosing freedom over fear. In today's episode, we dive into her journey of adventure, remote work, and what it really means to live life on your terms. Let's hit the road. This is going to be a good one. Welcome to Journey with Jake. This is a podcast about adventure and how through our adventures we can overcome the challenges of life that come our way. While I expect you will learn some things about different adventures, this show will entertain you. Each episode will feature a different guest or guests as they share experiences and stories from the different adventures they have been on. Not only will you be entertained, but you will also hear the failures and trials each guest faces and what they have done or are doing to overcome the hardships that come their way. My goal is to take each of us on a journey through the experiences of my guests with the hope that you'll be entertained and inspired to overcome your day-to-day challenges. After all, it's not all about the destination as it is about the journey. Welcome to another episode of Journey with Jake. I'm your host, Jake Bushman, and I'm so glad you're here. If you're new to the show, this is where we dive into the adventures and inspiring stories of people who are stepping out of their comfort zones and truly living life. You can listen to Journey with Jake on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you tune in. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at Journey with Jake Podcast for behind-the-scenes content and guest updates. If you're looking for more great shows, check out the Podmatch Podcast Network at podmatch.com/network. Today's guest, Michelle Coulson, brings an inspiring mix of adventure and intentional living. From solo biking across Europe to founding Remote Rebellion, she's all about helping people reclaim their freedom and design a life they truly love. If you enjoy this episode, be sure to check out episode 153 with Ryan Mellon. Like Michelle, Ryan took bold steps to break out of the norm and embrace a more fulfilling, adventurous path. I know you'll find inspiration in both their journeys. All right, let's get into this conversation with Michelle Coulson. Well, this is great. I've got Michelle, and is it Coulson? Am I saying that right?
Spot on.
All right. Spot on. Perfect. Michelle Coulson, welcome to Journey with Jake.
Thank you. It was really great to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you here. First of all, you're someone who's adventurous. I noticed that about you first and foremost, that you're adventurous. You've done a lot of fun things, including a solo bike trip, cycling trip from Montenegro to France, which we're going to dive into a little bit. But you're also the owner of Remote Rebellion, which we're going to talk about in a little bit as well. Before we do all that, though, I'd like to know a little bit about you, kind of where you're from, who you are, where you grew up, that sort of thing. So if you don't mind, just give us a little background on Michelle.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Michelle. I am from the UK, from a small town outside of Manchester, a town called Bolton. And growing up, I never really felt like that was home for me, even though that's where I spent my childhood. So my family and I actually moved to Spain for a year. There's a longer version to that story, but the purpose was to try and save their marriage. My sister and I were about 11, 12. And they decided to go to Spain, buy a bar in the south of Spain. Neither of them have ever owned a bar or had a business before. And my dad's a drinker. So the bar business didn't work out too well, as you can imagine. So we did that for a year. But for all the trials and tribulations of that, I think that sparked some adventure in me because I got to see a taste of different culture. So I really think that's when the seed was planted in terms of, was that when the seed was planted? Maybe it was planted before then, because I used to actually say to my parents, I'm never going to live in a house. I'm going to live in a bush and I'm going to have a monkey. I'm not going to have children. I'm going to do this. So I don't know, maybe it was planted before then, it was within me, but I think that really brought it out anyway.
Wow, and you're out doing it. And you said a sister, so is she older, younger?
She's older, so she's only 14 months older than me.
Almost Irish twins, but not quite.
Yeah.
Very good. Okay, great. So you got an older sister. Speaking of your parents and trying to save their marriage, did that have any?
Did
it work?
No. I think it was the last hurrah. They tried what they could and they parted ways, which I think was the best thing for one of them at least.
Yeah, there you go. So why do you feel like Manchester was never home? Is it just because of you're in a home, or is it and you want to live like in a bush with a monkey? I mean, what was the reason Why do you think
I
that
don't
never felt like home?
I really don't know, like, even, like, primary school and then secondary school, once we came back from Spain, I must have been about 12, I was in this group of friends and I never just it didn't feel like I was meant to be there, and I could never put my finger on what that was, and everyone was saying what they wanted to do when they were older, and I just said I wanted to live abroad. I didn't know where abroad was. I just wanted to be abroad.
Interesting. Okay, so you just kinda had it in your mind, "I wanna live abroad," but no real
Yeah.
set expectations or anything like that.
Yeah, and I would devour, like, maps. I would love looking at maps and the globe and looking at different ways, so there was always something in me that, like, made me wanna seek out more.
Gotcha, okay. And I love the fact you got a map behind you right now. You got the map of the world behind you. You're
I'm
living
actually
that.
in my brother-in-law's office, so this is just
And
kind of a
that's
nice
it's
coincidence.
not even your map. It's your
No,
brother-in-law's map.
I'm homeless by choice at the moment, so I don't really have a home to put a map on the wall on.
Very good. So you're at your sister's right now.
Yeah.
Nieces, nephews, you got anything like that?
Yeah, I got 2 nephews, they're awesome. I've just told them to be quiet so they're not, like, passing by. And they're 14 and 8, well, they're fantastic. I love taking the little one out to the woods, and we make fires and try and have, like, mini adventures as well, which is quite cool. The older one, I'm not cool anymore, he's 14, so I've accepted that.
You're not the cool aunt anymore, huh?
Mm-mm. I
Uh,
used to be, not anymore.
Not anymore. Nice. Well, that's great. It's great to get to know you a little bit and who you are. Something I read about, just kind of doing my little research on you and looking through your bio a little bit. It says you went to the university, and it sounds like in your 20s, that's kind of where you did a lot of adventurous things. What are some of those things you did? Kind of what did you do in your 20s?
Yeah, well, I think it actually yeah, it's probably started I studied tourism. I didn't know what I wanted to do. No one in my family had been to university, so but I didn't want to start work. I was like, I don't want a job. Like, how can I get away with not working? I know I'll study. So I did a tourism degree because I'm like, well, I like to travel, so I'll do that. It's what they call a Mickey Mouse degree, or so I've heard. So it was a really bit of a cop out of just doing something. And as part of that, you did a placement year, so like a sandwich course. So, what do you guys call it over there?
Like study abroad or something
Yeah, kind of. Like it was internships almost like
internship? Okay.
yeah, exactly. And one of them, it's not related to tourism at all. One of them was actually in a country club in Boca Raton in Florida, which was super interesting and gave me an insight into the world. Not necessarily the good side, but it gave me an insight into wow, that was the first time I'd been to America as an adult, and I was like, Americans are awful. Because all I had was this perception of this tiny one country club in this tiny part of one particular part of Florida, and I thought the whole of the USA was like that. So I think it was actually good for me because it gave me that perception until I actually traveled more and met more Americans from different parts of the world, from not from that country club. And I'm like, oh no, that was just that one place. Okay, I've assumed everyone was the same as this.
Okay, I gotta ask about this because this is interesting. Were they just like stuffy Americans? Like what was it about it? Was it just that whole
Yeah, it
perception?
was too much money, not enough intelligence, or and too much ignorance. Like these people, you think they had all of this money, they paid, hundred, tens of thousands for this country club, but they had no perception of the world outside their own like bubble, and it was really sad. You'd have them clicking at you from the like for the table, or like some of the questions they ask. They're like, "Oh, you're from South Africa, so you have like lions in your backyard, and you have like this," and I'm like, these like I'm 20 years old and I feel like I know more than these 80-year-old people. So it was interesting.
Wow. Okay, so as a young 20-year-old, you go to this, you participate in this, and you're thinking, "Man, these Americans."
Obviously, no offense meant that was young me understanding the
No,
world.
no. Hey, that's kind of the way it is. I feel when people aren't adventurous and when they're not out doing things, I kind of feel like you kind of get enclosed in that sphere a little
Yeah.
bit and not seeing that.
Yeah, exactly. But it was interesting because we got to I was supposed to do there 6 months, and after 3 months, I'm like, screw this, I can't do this anymore. I cannot. I cannot do it. It was just not a nice place. So I quit just before New Year's Eve and decided to go to New York and watch the ball drop for New Year's Eve. I didn't have any accommodation booked. I'm like, I'm just going to go there for the day and come back late, and so it was well worth it.
Wow. And
We
that's being
actually managed
adventurous itself.
To get like I went on my own, which was really naive, really, to go on my own as a 20-year-old in New York City, New Year's Eve, and I ended up on the subway, and there was a Mexican girl asking for directions at the same time, and we both looked at each other like, "Should we buddy up?" We're like, "Yeah, we don't know each other, but let's do that." And we somehow managed to blag our way, and we this was like 9 p.m. We were trying to get to central, like to Times Square, not realizing people had been queuing for hours to get to the point. So we were like, we don't want to queue. How can we get to the center? So we put on our feminine charm. She spoke Spanish to the Spanish speaking cops. I put on my best British accent, and we somehow managed to blag that we'd lost our friend. She didn't have her phone, and could you escort us to the bar that they were in? So we got police escort right to the center of where the ball dropped in Times Square.
Wow. Okay. And I could see the rebellion in you. It's funny that the name of your company is Remote Rebellion because yeah, there's a little rebel in you right there. She's like, I don't want to
Yes.
wait in the queue.
Yeah.
Wow. And just taking off on your own at 20 years old. Did you always kind of have that confidence to do that sort of thing?
Yeah. Yeah, I did. And I think my mum probably instilled me in this of like well, if you want to do something, do it. Like, what's stopping you? And instead of thinking of hurdles or challenges or this, it's like, well, you just figure it out. I guess I think I've got it in me not to have much fear, which is not always a good thing. But it's served me well, touch wood, so far.
That's amazing. And that's why I love doing this podcast. I talk to people like you who the confidence, and a lot of people have had to build up to that confidence. It's amazing that you have that confidence because I feel like that's something I lack a little bit. I kind of have that fear of getting going. And so when I hear other people talk and they're confident and they just do things and to just see how it helps them, it's huge. It's huge for me. So I appreciate that. That's great to hear.
Thank you. Why do you think you have that fear then?
I think I'm just a little bit risk averse. I think I'm a little bit more
Mm,
like, let's stick with kind of the status quo and, that sort of thing. And I think, and I know much similar to your story, I know we're going to talk about that here in a minute, but you know, with the whole pandemic and kind of what happened there, I think that's helped me blossom out of that. It helped me start this podcast, which I would have never
mm.
done prior to that, things like that. So I think it's something I've kind of always struggled with. I think it's gotten better. And I think doing this podcast has really helped because I've talked to people who have
Yeah,
encouraged me to do things. So I love it.
that's super cool.
Yeah.
But I
It's
think I
good.
think the world needs both. The world needs the reckless. The world needs the people who are more risk averse. Like otherwise, we'd be in
Yeah.
chaos
Yeah, for sure.
or never leave the house. Like one of the
Yeah.
two.
Exactly. Yeah. And I got to find that happy, I don't want to be stuck at home,
Yeah.
but yeah, exactly. All right. So when did you take this solo cycling trip from Montenegro to France?
I must have been age 20. No, I would have been about 30, about 29, 30.
Okay.
So I actually that there's a bit of a rewind to this cycle story.
Sure.
I was looking into cycling the world at one stage. Like I don't do things by halves, as you can tell. I'm like, I'm not gonna just like run a 5K, I'm gonna go learn how to run a marathon. I'm gonna do this and do things extreme. I was talking to I was in a relationship, this lovely guy called Steve, living in London, and I remember meeting two friends of a friend of mine. And I said, "Oh, what do you guys do for work?" And she said, "Oh, we're not working right now." I was like, "Oh, what are you doing?" She's like, "We're cycling around the world." And I'm like, "I want to do that." And I was like, immediately, like, I'd only just been cycling like to and from London just because I couldn't afford the tube because I was being paid pittance in this travel job. So I just cycled out of necessity. I hadn't ever thought about like cycling as a hobby. It was just a mode of transport. So I was like, "Oh my god, that sounds amazing!" And there was something within me. I was like, "I need to do that," and I don't know why. Like I said, I wasn't into cycling, and I wasn't particularly fit either. Like, I was pretty unfit at that age. So this would have been when I was maybe 25, 26, and the idea just stuck in my head. I was like, okay, how do I find the money to do this? I need to go and find a way to find some money to go on this round the world cycle. I started researching, going through Iran and then through South Africa to Cape Town and doing all of this research, like devouring maps again, which is what I love. And poor Steve had to get the cut because he was like holding me back from my dreams. Um, just such a lovely guy. And I decided I was going to go and work on a luxury yacht because apparently they paid really well and you didn't get taxed. So, okay, that's what I'm going to do. So I had to do a course to learn how to do fire rescue and all of this to work on luxury yachts. I was like, okay, I'm free, I'm single, I'm going to save this money, this is my plan, and then I'm going to cycle around the world. And That didn't happen because within a few weeks of me being on this yacht that I got a job on, I was not very well cut out for it. I don't like rules very much, and I don't like it when people are particular. And there's such a thing as boat clean, which I didn't realize was a thing where you have to cut something within an inch of its life with like a toothpick and like a toothbrush and getting in all the cracks. And I'm like, I got reprimanded, or I got told off for having a fingerprint on a TV screen, and this woman telling me how it's going to ruin someone's experience. And I'm like, nope, I can't do this. I can't cope with this. So
It's like a flashback back to Boca Raton and the
I know.
club.
She was American too. Maybe it's, he was Aussie though. So I think I was getting to this point of like, I can't do this, and I went on a date that night. I'd met someone in a bar a couple of nights earlier, and we decided to go on the date. The captain was like, "Okay, I'll come and pick you up on the tender on the small boat at this time. Meet me at the port at this time." So okay. So I'm on this date, and this date was going the best it could have done. And the captain started calling me, and I was like, I'm just going to ignore that and just carry on with this day. And the next day, I slept on the beach that night. Nothing happened. It was all very above board. Pardon the pun. And I was sleeping on the beach. I woke up and I was like, okay, I need to face the reality now. And I got back on the boat, and the captain's like, get your stuff. You're kicked off. Oh, that was my accommodation as well as my job. So I rang the guy who I was on a date with from the night before, and I was like, "Hey, I know we only met a couple of nights ago, but I don't have anywhere to stay. Can I come and stay with you?" And he was staying at his parents at that time, and I ended up staying with him, and we planned the rest of our lives together and ended up getting engaged, moved to London. My whole plans of cycling around the world kind of dwindled into a smaller trip.
Wow. Okay. Wow. That's a great story. Okay.
Thank you.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the much more condensed version. You'd be here all day if I gave you the longer version. But I just realized, like, he was very much he was in the finance world. He was more about material things than I was at that time, and he was more about the your late 20s. This is what you do. You get a mortgage, you get married, you do these things. And I got kind of drawn into that world, even though it wasn't really mine. I let myself get drawn in. I can't blame him for that. And then this cycle trip went from being a round the world 3-year cycle to 6 weeks through Europe. So it changed quite a lot. And I was happy about it at the time. I got a job in recruitment, got a proper job, away from travel. And I was doing the things it's supposed to do, getting engaged, saving for a mortgage, doing all of that stuff.
So, were you engaged when you did this solo trip then?
Yes, he was supposed to
Okay.
come with me, and he was supposed to do some of it, then a week or two, then a weekend, and then he didn't end up coming at all, which was a real shame. And I met a couple of people on the way, but it was mostly quite lonely. Actually, it was 5 6 weeks where I was talking to the bike some of the time because I was just like going a bit mad. And when you're just having a hard day and you don't have anyone to sort of like moan with or like even blame when they went the wrong direction, it's only you got yourself to blame. So it was quite a tough 5 or 6 weeks, even though it was so much adventure, and I had so many experiences. It would have been better to do with someone else.
Gotcha. Okay, so besides the loneliness, what other challenges did you face on this 5 6 week bike trip?
Well, I'd done no training, which I don't necessarily think you need to if you're going at your own pace. I'd done little research into the countries I was traveling through, and in terms of the temperature, like I went around April and didn't realize how cold it would be. So the kit that I'd bought, that I obviously hadn't done so much research into, wasn't quite set up, or my sleeping bag wasn't quite set up for camping. And I was like,
Gotcha.
yeah, I'll just wild camp. I'll just pitch up at the side of the road and I'll do this. I'm a little bit idealistic sometimes. And then in Bosnia, for example, there was signs for landmines. I was like, okay, I can't wild camp there, so that's not going to happen. I did a bike maintenance course before I left, but my brain isn't wired for that kind of. I'd done 3 bike maintenance courses over the course of a few years, and none of it stayed in. So I had a few issues like flat tires. I can't even repair a puncture, I'm ashamed to say. I mean, I probably could. It would take me about 3 hours. So I had some puncture repair. The kit was really heavy. I didn't realize how mountainous it would be until I was actually halfway up this mountain in Montenegro at the very start, having this brain wave of like, Montenegro literally means black mountain. Just feeling like an idiot with like 40 kilos of like weight in my panniers, dragging it up a hill.
You're just starting at that point. Was that a
Yeah.
moment? Was that a moment where you're like, "What am I doing?" Did you have that moment or two where you're like, "Why am I doing this?" Or were you just like, "Nope, I decide I'm going to do it. I'm doing it."
Don't remember, it's like it's quite a while ago now. I can't remember if I ever had that thought, but I guess my ego's a little bit would have been a bit too bruised if I'd have stopped that trip because I told so many people about it. I was raising money for charity water. I was blogging about it. Like, so there was absolutely no way that I was gonna not do that trip.
It was going to happen regardless.
Yes.
Besides the challenging things like, the temperature and the mountains and things like that, were there any moments on that trip where you had any moments of awe or wonder, or just like, wow?
Yeah, there's a few actually that I can think of, like, and small and large actually. Like, so there's a site called Warm Showers, which sounds really dodgy, but it's basically for cycle tourers to allow people who are cycling through to get a warm shower, to do some washing, to spend the night, whatever it is. So the hospitality that I got from the people that were letting me into their homes was just it was amazing. Like people, oh my god, that sounds really dodgy as a woman on your own. You shouldn't do that. But I got nothing but warm hospitality, people wanting to do good, um, and just people's smiles as well. And in the Baltics, they're not so known for their friendly smiles, but they kind of give warmth and hospitality, but with a look like they're going to kill you. So you kind of get used to it. It's just like, come into my house and eat my food. You're like, "Oh, okay, thank you." So it's you kind of get used to that way of going, I guess. And just little moments where there was a little robin that perched by me when I was camping and I was having a really stressful day. I couldn't put my tent up. It was really windy. And this little robin kind of like stayed with me. And I met a guy a week or two later in Bratislava and I was telling him about the campsite I went to. And I was like, oh, and then there was this little robin. He's like, that little robin was there with me as well. And he was talking about the same experience. So those are little magical moments like that.
Yeah, it's those little things I think at times that are mean the most to
Yeah.
us, and you only get that through being adventurous and doing things at times. So I love
Yeah.
that. It's fun to hear. All right, what do you think the bike trip did for you? The cycling trip did for you overall?
Oh, it's a good question. It did a couple of things. It gave me lots of thinking time. It made me realize how freeing it is to just be you on a bike, getting from A to B, and to have some time to actually sit like to do some thinking about what I am, what I want, what's important. The relationship at this time I realized wasn't the right relationship for me, so I was thinking about some of those things of like all the stuff I've been suppressing and keeping down when you have busy city life was coming up. So I think that came up for me, and it also made me realize like wow, look at it on a map. If you look at Google Maps and I've kept my I've mapped, I'm like I did that, like I got from there to there, like that's pretty awesome. Like imagine what other things you can do. So like it just shows you of like we put these limitations on ourselves of like, oh no, it's too far, it's too this, I don't have that, rather than being like, well, just do it, like what's the worst that can happen. So I think that it spurred more of that to come, I think.
I love that. That's great. I think this kind of leads in perfectly because at the time you were engaged and you kind of had that moment. You're like, definitely, it's probably not going to work out. Did you already have your job as a recruiter at that point, or no?
Yes, I'd just gone from working as an agency recruiter to an in-house recruiter. So I was about to start my new role basically as an in-house recruiter
Okay, so you're about to start your new
when
role
I,
as an
when I got
in-house recruiter.
back. Yeah,
When you got back, okay, you're about to
yeah,
start that. So you were trying, in other words, you were kind of doing what everyone says. Everyone says, hey, you need to grow up at some point. And that's kind of where you were at in life. Like, okay, I'm in a relationship, even though you knew that probably wasn't going to work out. But okay, I got to get a job. I got to finally grow up, as they
yeah.
say. Tell me about the next few years, because I think you enjoyed your job. I think you enjoyed being a recruiter. Kind of tell me about that experience a little bit.
Yeah, I think I was kind of like battling between because people tell you this is how you are when you're young, inverted commas. This is how you are when you're older. So this free spirit, this adventurous, this like living life on my own terms, that's what you do when you're in your 20s. You don't do that when you're in your 30s, like, and this has been drilled into me, I guess, not just me, everyone else, I think, in society. I was like, no, it's not that it's anti me. It's just this, it's a new me. And I was like convincing myself of that. Like, these are the things I should be concerned. I remember this designer handbag that my partner bought me for a birthday or Christmas. And this designer bag, like, it stood for so much because I don't even like handbags. I don't even like designer stuff. And I'm looking at this handbag like, that's not me. I'm not a designer handbag person. Like, it's really not me. I'd rather get a new bike bag or something like that. So yeah, I think the bike, you asked me before what the bike ride spurred as well. And I think it had reinvigorated that desire for adventure and that desire for being free and exploring. And that had been lost a little bit. Yeah, that had been lost a little bit over the years.
You've used the word a couple times. You used the word free. Tell me about that because I've you kind of used it a little bit when you're talking about your bike trip, and then just this idea of being free. Is it the social thing about it, like where you're saying where you feel like, oh, you got to do this when you're in your 30s, and does that make you feel not free? Kind of tell me about free to
You
you.
sound like my therapist now. Have you two been talking? Yeah, just the freedom of going where I want when I want. And sounds really selfish, but I've realized how much that is important to me. And yes, when you're in a relationship, you have to factor in the other person. When you have children, even more so. And that's actually one of the reasons I've decided not to have children, is because I don't want to lose that about my life. And that's a really important part of my life. So yeah, being free, being like, I I'm not happy in this situation. I'm going to leave this situation. I'm not happy in this place. I'm going to go to another one. And not just running away, but actually being like, if it's broken, fix it. Like, so many people, want to stay in that same place and don't want to do anything about it, or too scared to do something about it. So that's what being free is, I guess, for me.
Very good. Keep telling me the story because I think it led up to COVID, and all of a sudden you're working remote, and then
Yeah.
this spurred you to start your own company. Yeah, if you don't mind, just kind of give me
Yeah,
the
of
story.
course. Yeah, so after the bike ride, so I mean, there's lots of little bits in between in terms of
Sure.
like from leaving university to starting, yeah, to doing the bike ride. Like, there was loads of travel and adventure in that time, traveling around Southeast Asia and Australia and all. I did a lot in that time. So when I started the mature grown up life and didn't do that as much, I really did miss it. And I wasn't about just doing it for 2 weeks of the year or 4 weeks of the year in the holidays. That, like, I'm greedy. I wanted more than that. So it was wanting that more. So after the bike ride, I was in this recruitment job, and honestly, it was the best office job I've ever had. It was an Australian company. They were global. They had offices in Singapore. They had offices in Melbourne, Sydney, New York. So I got to work from the other offices, which is one of the reasons I took the job there. I was like, this is going to be the opportunity to travel. And it did give me that, which was awesome. The company was great. The people I worked with, I got to hire the people I'd worked with. So of course they were great. So I had that. And the office was amazing as well. It was in central London. Restaurants, we played games, we played Nerf gun wars in the office. It was really laid back. I walked around with no shoes on. We got gym membership. I had it good. I never try and say that. I guess, for marketing purposes, sometimes I'm like, oh, my life in the office was terrible, but it wasn't. But it wasn't for me. Like, being confined to four walls, or being confined to not being free, and you have to work here 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. I'm like, oh no, I don't like that. I seized as many opportunities as I could. 2017 is when the market was booming for software engineers, and that was mostly the people I was recruiting. So I noticed when I was having calls with them, they were saying, "Oh, we want remote. Do you have remote working?" So I would hear this quite often. And I remember saying to my boss at the time, I was like, we need to offer something more. We're not paying the highest salaries. We're not doing XYZ. We need to offer more benefits. These people, these developers, they're asking for this. So I must have spent about a year nagging and pushing and saying, we need this, we need this. We either need to up the salaries, or we need to offer remote. Of course, they don't want to up the salaries. So I managed to get up to 4 days a week hybrid, and they had to go into the office on Fridays. So in 2017, this was a massive win. So
Yeah, for sure.
I figured, okay, then and then I worked on getting flexible working hours. So I was really, and I wasn't even in HR. I was just purely in recruitment. So I was kind of like really pushing for these things for myself as well as actually for the people, but my ability to recruit these people. So it was a triple whammy really. And that was 2017 around. And that's 2017 was when I decided to end the relationship and started going through a 2 year weird phase where I was just it's my lost years, I call them. I was just doing things just because I could. So I was using this free, and just trying everything, doing everything. And I went back to traveling. I traveled around Peru and Bolivia. And I managed to convince my boss. I said, hey, the business isn't doing so well. I could see that they'd made redundancies, they were making layoffs. And how can I keep my job and still, get what I need out of it? So I proposed, how about I work 2 days a week? You just pay me for 2 days, but you let me work from Peru and Bolivia for the next 6 weeks, and I got to like have those days off. So I got the yes on that, which was good.
Wow.
So
Very
yeah,
good.
it's a good way of like optimizing that situation, and save them some money as well, and they could keep me.
Yeah, they're
But I
paying you less than half of what, for
yeah,
a week. Yeah, for
yeah.
sure.
And people always ask, like, how did you get, oh, you're so lucky. How did you get to do that? One, you just need to ask. But before that, you need to be good at what you do. If you're a half-ass employee, they're not going to make allowances for you. You need to be good at what you do and you need to work hard. And I'd not say I worked 50, 60 hours a week. I didn't. I was just good at what I did and I cared. And I knew how to make an impression on the company so that I was I wouldn't say I was indispensable because I think most people, employees, are indispensable, but I'd be hard to lose or it'd be tough to lose me because they'd have to find a replacement.
You're a good
I think
recruiter.
that was yes, exactly. Yeah,
You're
exactly.
doing your job and you're doing it well. I think that's
Yeah,
who you are. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. So I think that was important. That was kind of the start of this remote working thing. This is interesting. I can work from Peru. I can work from Bolivia. And then they sent me to Singapore for 2 months to recruit a team out in Vietnam there, which was amazing. So I started having all these little tastes of, oh, I can have both. I can travel and I can do a good job doing the job that I'm really good at and I like and it pays well. This is like they tell you can't have it all. I'm doing all of this. Yeah, that was a light bulb moment for me. And I bought a motorhome. I bought an RV. I decided to rent out my apartment in London and live in this RV for 6 months. Then the winter came. That wasn't the best idea. Like I said, the 2017 to 2019 was like the lost years, but in a good way.
Yeah, no, you got to do some great adventures in those lost years, so to speak. You got
Yes.
to go to
Yeah,
Bolivia.
for
In fact,
sure.
I think I saw a picture on Instagram. I think you did you ride the Death Road in Bolivia?
Mm,
I think I saw that. So yeah,
yeah.
you did some fun things. So
Yes.
I had a guest way back when who talked about the Death Road. So I saw
Oh,
them
it
like,
was so
oh
much fun.
yeah.
And
So
actually,
you
someone I met on that trip in Bolivia was kind of the reason that took me to Bali in the end. So around 2020 pandemic happened, everyone was locked down. Towards the end of 2019 and sort of like early 2020, I was in a really low place. I think I was finally, with this time to think, I was finally mourning the death of the relationship and of what was to be. And I was dealing with all the stuff that I'd kept down for so many years and it was all coming up. So I was feeling really, really low. We were in lockdown. I was miserable. I'd moved into a co-living space in London, even though I had an apartment and a camper van, because I realized I was low. Well, I didn't realize then, but afterwards I was lonely. I didn't have a community around me. All of my friends were moving out, getting married, having kids, and I wasn't in that space. I didn't want to be in that space. Moving into this co-living, I realized how lonely I actually was. The friend that shout out to Alvin, the friend I met in Bolivia, he called me and he was in Bali, and I was like, oh my god, what's it like there? And he's like, it's my happy place. And I remember the moment. I remember exactly where I was. I looked out the window like wistfully, like in a movie, and I looked up into the distance, and I'm like, happy place. Where's my happy place? And I was just like thinking about it. I'm like, my happy place is in the ocean. My happy place is surfing. I did a surf camp a year before in the north of Spain, and it was surfing. It's being in water. It's snorkeling. It's diving. I did a lot of that in Southeast Asia. I'm like, that's when I'm at my most at peace and at my happiest. And this was March 2020. We couldn't move anywhere. We were locked down. We definitely couldn't leave the country, let alone move within the country. So I broke the rules. I jumped into my RV and I headed down the motorway down to the south coast where there's surf in the UK. Although it's cold, but yeah.
Okay. I was going to say at first, I'm like, wait, you can't drive to Bali.
I
I'm
could
like, wait,
try.
where's this going? Okay, but you still wanted to get by the coast, even though still cold or whatever. But you're like in your mind, you're like, okay, my happy place is the water. It's the ocean. It's the water. I got this RV. I'm gonna go, even though it's
Yes.
in England, it's a little cold this time of year. I'm going to the ocean. Perfect.
Yeah.
Love it. Keep going. This is great.
And then there was no one on the road. Have you ever watched that film 28 Days Later? And there's like nobody on the road. There's like it was like that. And the police stopped me halfway and they're like, what the hell are you doing? You know there's a lockdown. You know there's a global lockdown right now. What are you doing? I was like, and I had a story in like that I was going to make up, if I'm honest, of why I had to move house, but luckily I didn't have to use that fake story. So I was like, I had to move. I've got somewhere that I'm moving to. You can have a look in the back. I've got all my boxes if you don't believe me. I had to move this day. So he did. He had a look around the back and he's checking and he's like, you don't have much stuff. And I'm like, I'm minimalist. And he looked at me like, what's that? So he checked ahead, check it was all legit, and he let me on my way. And I was like, okay, phew. So I got to my destination in Cornwall, in Newquay, and moved into this house share with these two guys and this one girl. And one of the girls was actually one of the women. She was one of the Beth. She's one of the reasons she got me through lockdown. Her, the coast, and a podcast called The Happiness Lab by Laurie Santos. Those three things got me through lockdown. Honestly, like it was like being able to walk along the beach, watching the sunsets. Her and this podcast, yeah, they saved me. I think.
That's great. Isn't that amazing too? Because you didn't have that set in your mind. I mean, you didn't know you're going to meet this lady, and you didn't know this podcast would have an effect on you or whatever. I love hearing those stories because it's amazing how that works. So, how did you get to Bali then? How did that all work out?
Well, everything was all fine and dandy and lovely. We couldn't move anywhere. We had to deal with a lockdown. And so then the winter came in the UK and the coast suddenly didn't seem so great anymore. And I was like, oh, it's too cold here. So it was December 2020 and there was a threat of another lockdown happening in the UK. And I'm like, I'm not doing this again. So I held till maybe I could look into that. Let's have a look into that. So I started applying for the visa and it was still a little bit hairy, right? This was like March 2021. But I found a way with any kind of third world country, if you know the right person, you pay
Mm,
enough money, you can get a visa. So I
interesting.
figured it out and I got a visa for Bali and landed April 2021. And my idea was luckily I still have my job. I was really fortunate to keep my job
That's
during
what
the
I was going to
pandemic.
ask you. If you're still a recruiter, you're still working for the
Yeah.
same company. Good.
And
Okay.
honestly, I'm so grateful that I had that job as well because I think having that purpose in the day, even though we weren't actively recruiting, they kept me on. So I was doing stuff, I was contacting people still, I was doing whatever I could. I kept that job. I was, really fortunate to keep it. And I said to my boss, I was like, hey, I need to go here. Whenever the office opens up in London again, let me know and I'll come back. And that was my intention. My intention was to go for maybe 2 months, push my luck, and then go back to the real world. And I was there and had everything just seemed to click into place. The way people were thinking there, the people who had moved there and changed their lives, no longer the people back home seemed to be really hurdles based rather than overcoming the hurdles. Whereas there, I was like, well, why don't you just stay here? I'm like, I can't live here. What do you mean live here? I've got my work and I've got this. They're like, quit. Why are you saying things like it's so simple? So I was like, no, I can't do that. So then my boss was like, right, the office is opening. You need to come back now. This is around July 21. And I was like, no, why do I have to come back? Like we've been working remotely for the past 18 months. I've been working well. I've been working to the hours. I've been doing this. What's the reason? Well, it's a company policy. That's not a reason. That's like your parents saying, because I told you so. I'm not a kid. And I never dealt with it that well then either. So I said, okay, I quit then. So I quit and I thought, shit, I've got a mortgage to pay. I need to actually find some work. And I struggled to find work. I realized it wasn't as easy as finding work in London. Finding remote work was a whole different ball game, especially being in Bali. They just couldn't compute that you were working from somewhere in a different time zone or whatever, even after everything that happened. So I was like, oh, if it's this difficult, and I'm good at what I do. I've got a good network. It was a really good time for recruitment. Other people are going to be struggling with this as well. And that's when the light bulb moment came off of like, I could help people. So I got two freelance roles, both of them recruiting for remote first companies. And I started like doing loads of research into remote first companies, how to access them, the job boards, and I started gathering all this information. Someone said to me, "Oh, you could coach people on how to do the same as you," and I'm like, "I'm not a coach," and they're like, "Oh, you could," and everyone's a coach in Bali. If you've ever been, everyone's a life coach. So I'm like, "Yeah, you can do this." I'm like, "Okay." Yeah, that was 4 years ago.
Wow. Okay. Wow. Amazing. Yeah, your whole story is just amazing. That light bulb moment. When you said I quit, what kind of fear, if any, did you have, or was it so strong that desire to not go back to the office that you overcame that? Because that's, I mean, that's still a little, like you said, it was your comfort zone. It was kind of like your,
There was definitely a bit of fear in it, but I'd say if I had to say the split, it would be 60% determination of just like I don't see another way, maybe 20% fear, and the other 20% I'll figure it out.
wow. Okay.
Don't know if that split's right, but you get where I'm going.
So when people tell you that, especially now, because now you're coaching these people and helping people, when they say they feel stuck, I can't seem to find something, I feel stuck. What kind of mind shift do they need to have? Like, what kind of shift do they need to have in their mindset in order to not feel stuck, would you say?
I think one of the biggest things that really helped me was what is the worst that can happen? What is the absolute worst? And I went through this myself, and I went through what is the worst that can happen if I quit my job? I don't get another job for 6 months, 12 months. I lose my house in London. My house gets taken away from me. I move back in with my sister in my nephew's games room, which I'm staying at the moment. I have food on the table. I have family around that love me. That's my worst case. My worst case is living with loved ones with food on the table. Then I'm doing pretty well. And this is what was the thing that I had, that's my worst case scenario. Like that's not bad at all. And I say that with people as well. What is your worst case? Are you going to be homeless? Are you going to be without food? Are you going to be sick? Or is the chance and the fire up your butt what you need to go into something?
Yeah, there you go. Just thinking about that in my own life of things I've had to like, you can be my
Yeah.
therapist too. Yeah, that's perfect.
We'll help each other.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting too with the whole remote work thing. And I've talked to a couple of folks who work remote, and I think one of them actually was buying a place in Bali or something because he
Oh,
was
no way.
working remote. Yeah, and it's just it's interesting concept to me. And really, I remember when I was first told, hey, once or twice a week you can start working from home, kind of this hybrid method. And then the pandemic hit, and also it's like we can all just work remote. I mean, no one has to work in an office. Is really what it came down to. What are your experience as someone who's recruiting in this and kind of helping people try to find fully remote things? Because I think a lot of them, like you said, and your company was a good example of this, they're offering hybrid, but that's not the same as fully remote. And you got people who want to live in Bali and Portugal and places like that who need fully remote. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think, because I've seen too in the news, a lot of people saying, hey, people are going back, they're making people go back to the office. What do you say about that? How do you navigate that?
Without swearing too much. The whole return to office thing really pisses me off because there's one thing to have your on-site, your hybrid, your remote, whatever. It's your company, you do what you want.
Yeah.
But to bring people and uproot people whose lives have changed because of the contract that they signed, that they wanted to sign and be remote, and to have that taken away is disgusting. Like it really is. If you want to be a hybrid or an on-site company, fine. But to take that away from people without any the fact there's no legal repercussions for that, I just think is crazy. It's absolutely crazy. I personally don't think hybrid works. The model which I think suits most people is actually remote first. So you said fully remote there. So I just want to use the terminology remote first. That is generally where a company has a office or access to an office, but it's remote first. So maybe they will get people together once every quarter, for example, and everyone gets
Gotcha.
together in the same room. I believe that is the best model for everyone because what that does, it gives people who like the office and like the office environment the option to go there. But the people who don't. And you still get everyone together at the same time.
That makes sense, and I'm glad you kind of distinguished that between, yeah, fully remote versus remote first. I like that. You still have a place that you could
Yeah.
use if you need to. Maybe we meet once a quarter and have a team meeting or whatever
Yeah.
in the actual office, but you're remote first. It's a good way to look
Yeah.
at it.
But the funny thing is now, like, all this whole like circular globe that we live in, I guess so the founder of the company that I quit to start Remote Rebellion, we'd never met before, but when I went to Bali, I heard that he lived there, and I went to go and chat with him, and we got on like a house on fire, but we butted heads on the remote work thing. But he'd sold the company before I even started or something like that anyway, but, like, we got on really well, and he believes people need to be together to build a business, and I just don't believe that, and we're at loggerheads, but I must admit, we're both seeing each other's point of view as we're swapping over a little bit. He's like, "Oh, maybe you don't all need to be in the same room all the time," and I'm now saying, "Hey, maybe you do need to get together now and again. That is also important." So we're seeing each other's
You
perspectives a little
kinda
bit.
Yeah, okay, I
Yeah.
like that. Kinda getting it back together. So for you who's in this and you're helping people, is there a certain, I don't know if this is the right word or not, type of job? Or I mean, tech, is it, I don't know, education? I don't know, what is the kind of, what are the jobs out there that are remote, I guess is what I'm asking.
Most jobs can be done on a laptop. Any job that can be done on a laptop can be done remote. So people think of software engineers, or they
Mhm.
think of content creators, or copywriters and things like that. But most jobs can actually be done remotely. Not most jobs that you would go to an office for, let's say. I even helped a remote nurse get a remote nursing job. So jobs that you wouldn't even think that existed. So the main limitation is yourself, I would say to somebody else. Like, it's not that you don't have a degree, that you don't have the experience, that you've never worked remotely before. That they're not limiting you. They make it harder. The only thing that's limiting you is your belief and your determination to do it. And I know that sounds a bit like, woo woo, but it's true. If I've helped a 21-year-old graduate of no experience, and I've helped a 68-year-old who was being told that he was too old to get remote work. And neither of them were in the tech space, neither of them were in typically very common remote roles, but they figured it out because they said, I'm doing this. And that's the difference.
Wow. Let's talk about this company then, Remote Rebellion. First of all, I love the name. It's a great name,
Thank you.
especially after talking to you. I'm like, I see this rebellious side of you,
Makes sense now.
which makes total sense. So the idea behind it is to help people get remote jobs, and you're there to kind of coach along and help that kind of, yeah, kind of give us the little spiel on Remote Rebellion, if you don't mind.
Yeah, exactly. So it's for people who have either worked remotely before or have not, who want to get remote work, and not just any old remote job, but something that aligns with their values and fits around their life. So it could be that someone is wanting to change careers, or they want to change industries, or they just simply want to get their next job. They know exactly what they want to do and they want help finding that. And a lot of people ask me, well, why do I need to pay you to do that? I can just go and do that myself. Yes, you could, but the market is so competitive right now that it's a lot harder. So for every last time I looked at this, there was 8% of jobs on LinkedIn that were remote, and over 43% of all applications go to that 8%. So the supply and demand right now is really, really tricky. So one of the best ways to get a remote job, or to see the opportunities, is by getting introductions, by networking, and really knowing how to get ahead of the competition so that your application gets noticed. So people come to me, a lot of people in their 40s, a lot of people in their 50s, and they're like, I never had a problem getting a job before. I just apply, or someone would introduce me and I just get in, and that was it. And it's not the same anymore, just because it is so much more competitive.
And do you think, I mean, it sounds like to me your whole recruiting experience has definitely helped with this, with your connections, with everything else. Like you said, you're
Yeah.
good at your job. So I think I
Yes.
think that shows as well. What kind of, any kind of you mentioned a 21-year-old, you mentioned a 68-year, any kind of examples? You don't have to give names or anything, but any kind of examples of a success story or two that we could hear from Remote Rebellion?
Oof, there's loads. One person actually that springs to mind, I won't mention her name, but she was actually she wanted to be a digital nomad. She wanted to work from anywhere job, and she'd been searching for 6 years. So she did a bit of teaching English, she did a bit of this, and nothing really stuck. And once we started working together, One of the ways that people don't realize is they get so tunnel vision into their own experience. It's obvious to them what their CV shows, what their LinkedIn profile shows, but you come in as an outsider and you say, I don't even understand what you do. And you're like, what do you mean? And I'm like, I'm giving you 6 seconds, which is what the average recruiter gives on your profile. I'm going to scan that and be like, Jake, no, don't have a clue what you do. Next. And you're not Jake. You're just a name on a screen. And it sounds really brutal to say that, but unless you know somebody, oh, name A on screen, and if you don't let it show me in 6 seconds how you're going to help me with my problem, you're gone, and I'm going to go to the other 500 people. So I give a bit of brutal love and showing people like, this is how people view your profile. It might be someone spends 5 minutes on it, but the average person is what you're going for, will be looking at it this way. You need to make it obvious to them. So we looked at that, and I helped her understand how someone would look at her profile. We worked on her LinkedIn, on her resume, on her video applications as well, and how to stand out. And within, was it 4 weeks? No, sorry, 6, 7 weeks, she got a remote job, and now she's working from Spain, and she's not having to be in the UK anymore. So she's pretty happy.
Wow, that's amazing. I didn't realize the whole 6 seconds. That's all it takes, and you're moving on.
Yeah.
Nope, don't know. Nope, nope.
Yeah. It's just a
Wow,
little bit longer than the average Tinder swipe, apparently. It's the same thing, really.
wow,
I compare dating with recruitment quite often.
wow. That's amazing. And you've got a team, right? You got a team of people that work with you.
Yes, I've got an amazing team. And honestly, one of the best things I did very early on in the first 6 months was hiring a VA, even though I couldn't necessarily afford to hire a VA. And she was actually one of my rebels. I don't like the word clients, but like she was one of my rebels. And I was like, you're great. This is the thing with a lot of the people I work with. They don't look so great on paper. They would probably not get past my swipe. But when you speak to them, you know they're just great at what they do, and they've done a bit of communications, they've done a bit of marketing, a bit of sales, and they look job hoppy, or they look like they don't know what they want. But really, they're just multifaceted, and they can pick things up really quickly. But on a paper, on a screen, it looks jumpy, or it looks like you can't piece it together. You can't put them in a box. And
Yeah,
this is the biggest challenge in the people I work with. And she was just great. She did way more than she was supposed to. And she's really set my business up from there. And I've just had great people fall in my lap. The universe has brought great people to me. So shout out to my team, because they are the best. I wouldn't be able to do this now if it wasn't for them. So I got a team of 7 right now, and they are just the best.
that's awesome. And they're all remote, right?
Of course. I did
I
I did an
I sure hope you say yes to this.
imagine. They're all in the office here. Um, I did an April Fool's actually. I went a bit too realistic, because I went full. I lost followers and everything on because of this. It was like we're rebranding to hybrid hydration, and it was like I thought that people would have got it, but the logo was like 2 white fat men around a water cooler, like
Cooler.
hugging the water cooler. I've got the team together. Like we got. I was in Bulgaria a few months back. Everyone who was based in Europe, I flew them out, and we had most of the team there. And it was so nice getting everyone together. It really, like, we got so much out of it. So I would love to do that every year. And it does make a difference getting everyone together. You just don't need to do it every bloody day or every
Yeah,
month.
yeah, exactly. I love that. If you don't mind, kind of where's your team? Where are they all scattered around the world?
Brazil, Argentina, Bali, Bulgaria, Italy, South Africa. Who else have I missed? Vietnam.
Wow, you're a global
Yeah.
company. I love it.
Yeah, it's really,
7
and I'll
people.
be heading to Mexico in a couple of months as well. So we'll be working on a few different time zones.
Yeah, no, I love it. This has been awesome, Michelle. This has been great hearing who you are, your story, what you've done, and I love the fact that you're living your dream. You had that little spark, and you're out living it, making it happen. I wish you nothing but success. Before we wrap up, I do want to ask you a question. This is a question I like to ask everybody. I want to know, for you, what does adventure mean to you?
Ooh, never thought about this. It's a good question. Adventure means to me breaking out of your comfort zone and out of your daily routine or weekly or monthly routine, and trying something a little new and maybe a little scary.
Something a little new, something a little scary, getting out of your comfort zone. Love it. I hear that a lot. I love it. That's exactly what I agree. That's exactly what I believe adventure is. Michelle, thank you so much for coming on Journey with Jake.
Thanks for having me.
What an inspiring conversation with Michelle Coulson, from her solo bike ride through Europe to building a community through remote rebellion. Michelle shows us that adventure and freedom come in many forms. Thank you, Michelle. If you want to learn more or take steps towards your own remote lifestyle, be sure to visit remoterebellion.com and give Michelle a follow on Instagram at remote_rebellion. Thanks so much for listening to Journey with Jake. If this episode resonated with you, share it with a friend or leave a rating and review. It truly helps others discover these stories. I've got another great episode coming your way next week, so stay tuned. And as always, remember, it's not always about the destination as it is about the journey. Take care, everybody.